And so it's interesting to hear that. I'm not sure how you write something if it's not for yourself. That's one of the reasons artists do something, is for the core of themselves. And then there's an outer layer that might be society. There's probably an intermediate layer that's other musicians, because that's who I really write for. But you know, people who will understand every single gesture you make, because they're doing the same thing for 30 years or whatever. If Dylan is telling the truth there, then in a way, he really just cut himself off from some really important formative work that starts in the mid-50s. And there's a traveling exhibit of Bob Dylan's poetry when he was in high school. And it was at the Museum of Modern Art. No, it was somewhere else. I can't remember where. Oh, about 5 years ago. It's startling. And I have to say, having read things, you know, written in a high school notebook that were preserved and on view there, and if you can ever see this, it's fantastic. I think it stays mostly in Minnesota, at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. Or maybe it's all the way back in Duluth. Anyway.
I feel like Dylan, when he gives like speaking interviews, he like makes fun of the interviewer a lot. Yeah. That's what we kind of picked up on.
You think so?
Yeah.
Dylan was an extremely intelligent man whose mind raced. You can see it if you look at his what's that film that came out? No Way Home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you look at that, there are so many moments when Dylan is just sort of stepping back from reality because his mind is working constantly. And I guess maybe he's laughing at reality, but not laughing. Because the world is both great and very small. It's wonderful and grand and extremely trivial sometimes.
I feel like Dylan, when he gives like speaking interviews, he like makes fun of the interviewer a lot. Yeah. That's what we kind of picked up on.
You think so?
Yeah.
Dylan was an extremely intelligent man whose mind raced. You can see it if you look at his what's that film that came out? No Way Home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you look at that, there are so many moments when Dylan is just sort of stepping back from reality. Anyway, maybe he didn't mean his early poetry or his early folk music. So let me try and go with that statement. Then maybe, if that's really the case, then it's not a trilogy, right? Then he's turning a corner at Highway 61, revisited. Right? Let me ask you a question. You know where that title comes from? Well, Highway 61 is the backbone highway that runs right down by the Mississippi, from Minneapolis to New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And if there's a main artery in America, that's it. Because once the day of the steamboats passed in, it was about Highway 61, north to south, from the great northern city, Minneapolis, to the great southern city, New Orleans. And plus that goes through. You want to talk about America's heartland? Everything from wheat fields to the French border, right through Memphis, right through St. Louis, close enough to Kansas City. It's actually not that close to Kansas City. Sorry, geographers. There's somebody I'm losing. It's a very important highway that reveals the spectrum of America. It would be the same way. Also, I think he pointed out in one of his diaries that being a teenager in Duluth, just north of Minneapolis, he knew where Highway 61 was, and when he would set foot on Highway 61, he would think, this terminates in New Orleans. If we go south here to US 1, Route 1, the Boston Post Road, it ends up at Key West, right? It's just one continuous route. It's magic to me, must have been to him too. To say, well, if I just walked down that road far enough, I'd wind up in Memphis, or where Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil, supposedly. That was at the crossroads. He even writes about it. Going down to the crossroads, try to flag it out. That's Robert Johnson. I think to understand Bob Dylan, you need to really read the lyrics of Robert Johnson and listen to it. That's if Dylan is one of the crowning poets of the United States, Robert Johnson is one of the early poets writing in central Mississippi in the 1930s. Highway 61, and the reason he revisits it is there are already 2 songs written about Highway 61 at that point.
And you said you work with artists today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What artists do you work with?
Currently?
Or in the past?
I have worked with Kanye West.
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah. If you really want me to drop the big bombs here.
Yeah, you can name drop. You're allowed.
Yeah.
Marvin Gaye. Main ingredient, Cuba Gooding Jr. Patti Smith. I've been blessed. I mean, my name is not a huge name, but most of us in the music business are not huge names. There's only so many Lady Gagas, But there are a lot more Red Ones. So you probably don't even know who Red One is, right? Well, that's her songwriter, one of her co-writers, right? So yeah, I mean, lots and lots and lots of people.
What do you think of our generation's music?
Sucks, no. And I actually like, you know what I like right now? I like Beach House. That's good. I like where they're going with that. I mean, to me, it never gets bad or worse or better. It's, for me, human creativity is pretty much a standard thing. And I got to tell you, the Beatles were like dismissed when I'm in high school. I mean, dismissed by parents and those, not mine. I had the best parents in the world. The Beatles were dismissed. Ray Charles was dismissed. Elvis was seen as curiosity. I mean, they were right there. It's a very strange world where you're always wondering. I have students who come in all the time, in the 25-year history of this program, and saying, well, really, techno is not that good because it's out currently, or emo is not that good. And it's sort of right in the beginning with that one. But, even Maroon 5 has kind of come around and done some really very interesting stuff lately. I don't know, I try to openly embrace anything that's good, and so for me, Lady Gaga's great writing. Although some people can't stand her characterization, and some people hate Bob Dylan's voice, and some people hate Lady Gaga's voice. Some hate both, that's okay. Some openly embrace both. It's, to me, human creativity and value in pop art is just consistent. I don't know. There's not one decade that's better than another. I'm teaching an online intensive course starting on Monday called Popular Music in America, and I've already had some student communications, just like the question you just asked, which tells me that sometimes as a young person, I think I can remember back that far, you sort of question what it is you're listening to because other people tend to dismiss it. That's a good questioning because that leads you, I think, to the point where you go, well, I do like this and it is good. It makes you question the worth of your own taste because your taste and what is good in art have nothing to do with each other. They might coincide, but they might not. I don't know if that's making sense. We're getting into aesthetics there. In other words, it's you figure, well, I like Lady Gaga, so it has to be good, or I like Glenn Miller, so it has to be good. Well, both people are wrong. It's about knowing what is good and what isn't. I will tell you that as a teenager, I intuitively knew that there was something going on with the Beatles and the Stones. I liked them better at the time, because they were kind of dirty and sleazy. The Beatles were all.
What do you think made all of Bob Dylan's albums aesthetically valuable?
I would say a certain consistency. He goes through a lot of bands. You know, in fact, the album you're exploring, he's not being backed up by the Hawks at that point. That's his band that's about to back him up from Blonde on, or after Blonde on Blonde onwards. And so the consistency is in the value of his poetry, especially after the early singles, when he established his career as a folk singer. Before, before 1960. He's a question mark in society at that point. So from Freewheelin' on through Blonde on Blonde, he's really using session musicians and different producers, sometimes two on the same record, as on Highway 61 Revisited. One side's done by one producer, one's done by the other. But despite all that variation, they all sound very similar. I think it's his voice, that they drape the music on the voice the right way. That gives it consistency. From bringing it all back home, up through Blood on the Tracks, there is a poetic consistency that I find just staggering. It's got the complexity of T.S. Eliot's structure. I mean, he's writing villanelles and he's writing ballades, and we don't even think of those as viable poetic forms. They aren't. They went out with Provence and the Languedoc in southern France in about the 13th century, if you want to get technical. But it's an incredible writer. You hear it. They sound alike, and yet they are different from song to song. But what you're talking about is consistency there. It's a writing style. If you read novels, right? Well, let's just pick a bad example. Stephen King. Every Stephen King novel reads the same freaking way, right? But it's amazingly consistent, right? I'm not sure I really like his work, but I'll tell you what it is. It's like pretty well written until the last few. It's kind of making some money. You might say the same thing about Shakespeare too. And I don't know what that says. Did I just compare Stephen King and Shakespeare? Yeah, I guess I did. Indirectly. Yeah, I think it's the consistency, right, that really makes it important. He's relentless, right? It's not a simple twist of fate. There's a golden quote. One finally came to mind.
If we were to argue that with the waning of the American confessional poets,
yeah,
and the Beats poet of the late 50s and early 60s, and the death of Robert Frost and T.S. Eliot, poetry loses its position in American life as a vital public voice. What replaces it?
I got you. Yeah, I might even agree with that, especially when you put the word confessional in there, all right? And I urge you to define that to your satisfaction. It's not what you do in a church with the priest, all right? But it is similar in a way. I think that there are many cultures for whom the difference between a poet who sings and a poet who talks is incomprehensible. And so if you do one, you do the other. And I think what we're seeing is a shift back to the musical domain, meaning that poetry is now often being sung or perhaps recited against a beat. And I see hip-hop as a logical inheritor of the brilliance of T.S. Eliot. And how many else you want to include in there. I mean, I think there's a form of poetry, the confessional poets, but I think those continue. I would put Patti Smith in there because she does release volumes of poetry. I would also put Charles Simac in there, S-I-M-A-C. I think these are spectacular poets. They are writing in a society that no longer wants to make too much of a distinction between poetry and lyrics, and certainly doesn't if you look at hip-hop or the better writers in reggaeton or the, whatever, no Daddy Yankee, no Pitbull. It's kind of fun, but kind of creepy, you know, so let's look at the heavier stuff. I think that some of the writers I've already mentioned, KRS-One, Chuck D, Rakim, Talib Kweli, Kanye West, maybe Millie Jackson this year.